When Jon Bones Jones first stepped into the UFC, he redefined what it meant to dominate. Long reach, lightning speed, unorthodox striking. He collected victories one after another, becoming the youngest UFC Light Heavyweight Champion at age 23, defending his title multiple times against elite adversaries. He wasn't just a fighter. He was constantly praised for his fight IQ, unmatched athleticism, and ability to adapt inside the cage. Championships, records, respect. But the story of Jon Jones also has its shadows. Drug test failures, legal trouble, suspensions, fights overturned, license revocations. What happens when the legacy of a fighter is as troubled as it is triumphant? In this video, we'll trace the rise of Jon Jones, his greatest moments, his darkest setbacks, and try to answer a question that echoes through the MMA world. Can someone remain a legend even when the controversy never fades?
Jon Bones Jones didn't come into the UFC just by luck. He came with a mix of raw talent, youth, and a style unlike most. At just 21 years old, he made his UFC debut at UFC 87 in August 2008. Facing Andre Gusmão, young Jon showed flashes of what would become his signature: reach, unorthodox striking, and confidence. Before that, he had built a solid, undefeated record in smaller fights, catching the eye of fight fans and promoters. His early wins were good, but more important was the way he won, often with creativity, agility, and an ability to adapt. Jones's climb involved beating some serious competition. Athletes like Brandon Vera, Vladimir Matyushenko, and Ryan Bader were respected names. With each win, Jones sharpened his skill set: groundwork, wrestling, striking, timing. Despite a major controversy, in just his third fight in UFC, Jones suffered the only loss on his record via disqualification against Matt Hamill in 2009. But many argue that loss was more a rules issue, illegal elbows, than being outfought. That early blemish didn't define him. He bounced back. Then came the moment that changed everything. UFC 128. On March 19, 2011. Only 8 UFC fights in, Jones was matched with Mauricio "Shogun" Rua for the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship. The stakes were huge. Rua was a veteran, a legend in MMA. Jones was seen by many as dangerous but unproven at the very top level.
At 23 years old, Jon Jones became the youngest UFC Light Heavyweight Champion in history, defeating Rua via TKO in the third round. It was decisive, it was impressive, and it marked the beginning of a reign that would be filled with spectacular highs and later, serious lows. What set Jones apart wasn't just physical gifts, it was his adaptability, fight IQ, and ability to stay calm under pressure. He became a champion early, defended the title multiple times, high-pressure fights where expectations were immense. He faced fighters like Quinton Jackson, Lyoto Machida, Vitor Belfort, all legends. Jones kept evolving. But even in this early stage, signs of trouble were already there. His unorthodox style sometimes pushed referees' limits. Later on, issues with regulations and drug testing would cloud some victories. Yet in the beginning, all anyone saw was excellence. From his first title fight to his championship defenses, Jon's journey would continue building and unraveling. In the next part, we'll dig into his championship reign, the blockbuster fights, the controversies, and the moments many believe tarnished what seemed like a perfect legacy. After capturing the title from Mauricio "Shogun" Rua at UFC 128, Jon Jones began a championship reign that many consider one of the most dominant in UFC history. His first defense came against former champion Quinton "Rampage" Jackson. Jones controlled the fight with reach, creativity, and composure, finishing Jackson via submission in the fourth round. Next, he faced Lyoto Machida, a karate master known for his elusive style. Many expected Machida to trouble Jones, but instead, Jones delivered one of the most brutal finishes of his career, locking in a standing guillotine choke and dropping Machida unconscious to the mat. He went on to defend his belt against Rashad Evans, his former teammate turned bitter rival, and then survived a near submission scare against Vitor Belfort, showing grit and resilience in the face of danger. But perhaps the defining rivalry of Jon Jones's career came with Daniel D.C. Cormier. Their feud was more than just two fighters battling in the octagon. It was personal, it was bitter, and it spilled over into press conferences, interviews, and even a physical altercation at a media event. The first fight took place at UFC 182 in January 2015. Cormier was undefeated, a former Olympic wrestler, and seen as one of the toughest men to ever step into the octagon. But Jones controlled much of the bout, using his wrestling to neutralize DC's strengths and winning by unanimous decision. Their rivalry continued to simmer with trash talk, heated exchanges, and the promise of a rematch that fans couldn't wait to see. When they finally met again at UFC 214, Jones delivered a devastating knockout with a head kick, but the result was later overturned due to a failed drug test, turning triumph into controversy. Jones's reign was extraordinary, but it was also unstable. While he continued to dominate inside the octagon, his battles outside of it, with suspensions, drug tests, and legal troubles, would become just as famous as his victories.
As dominant as Jon Jones was inside the cage, outside of it, his career was overshadowed by controversy. His talent was undeniable, but his choices often jeopardized everything he had built. In 2015, only months after defeating Daniel Cormier, Jones was involved in a hit-and-run incident in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He fled the scene, leaving behind an injured pregnant woman. The UFC quickly stripped him of his light heavyweight title, making him the first champion in the promotion's history to lose a belt due to disciplinary action, not defeat. Then came the drug test failures. In 2016, just days before his rematch with Cormier at UFC 200, Jones tested positive for banned substances and was pulled from the fight. His reputation took another massive hit, and he was suspended for a year. A year later, at UFC 214, Jones seemingly redeemed himself by knocking out Daniel Cormier with a brutal head kick. But the victory was once again clouded. The win was overturned when he tested positive for turinabol, an anabolic steroid. Jones was stripped of the title yet again. Legal issues continued to follow him: arrests for DUI, domestic violence allegations, and repeated run-ins with the law. The question many fans asked was simple: could Jon Jones ever get out of his own way? After years of suspensions, stripped titles, and uncertainty, Jon Jones shocked the world by announcing his move to heavyweight. Fans wondered, had his time passed? Would his body handle the new division? Could he still dominate after years away from the octagon? On March 4, 2023, at UFC 285, Jon Jones faced Ciryl Gane for the vacant heavyweight championship. Many expected a tough test, but Jones made it look easy. Within just 2 minutes of the first round, he submitted Gane with a guillotine choke, cementing his place as the UFC Heavyweight Champion. With that victory, Jon Jones joined the conversation not only as the greatest light heavyweight of all time, but possibly the greatest mixed martial artist in history. A man of brilliance and chaos, genius and controversy, triumph and downfall. Jon Jones's story is one of contradictions, a fighter who could achieve greatness beyond imagination, but who constantly battled demons outside the cage. His legacy is still being written, but one thing is certain: the name Jon "Bones" Jones will never be forgotten in the history of combat sports.
Jon "Bones" Jones is a paradox. Inside the octagon, his mind was as sharp as his physical gifts. His creativity, patience, and fight IQ allowed him to solve problems in real time, often making world-class opponents look ordinary. His mentality in combat was that of a stoic warrior, calm, analytical, unshaken even in the face of danger. But outside the cage, his discipline wavered. The same confidence that made him fearless sometimes pushed him into recklessness. His story teaches us a painful truth. Greatness requires not only talent and mindset in competition, but also mastery over oneself in everyday life. And yet, despite the controversies, suspensions, and setbacks, Jon Jones found a way to return. His move to heavyweight and his championship victory showed us that even when a warrior falls, he can rise again. The lesson here is not to ignore the flaws, but to learn from them. Mentality is not just about how you fight others, but how you fight your own weaknesses. Jon Jones will always remain one of MMA's greatest enigmas, a symbol of brilliance and imperfection. And perhaps that's why his story resonates so deeply, because like him, we all face battles inside and outside the arena of life. The true test is whether we learn, adapt, and rise stronger.
Jon Jones's journey reminds us that even the greatest champions are human, flawed, but capable of rising again. If his story inspired you, imagine how far you can go when you apply the mindset of a warrior to your own battles. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next deep dive into the mindset and legacy of combat sports legends. And let me know in the comments, do you believe Jon Jones is the greatest fighter of all time? Or has his legacy been too damaged by controversy?